Think Realty Nation, it's your host, Abhi Golhar. Welcome to another stellar Think Realty podcast. Today we're talking about asset protection and everything you need to protect your assets. You know, there's a really wise man that once said, if you're going to build assets and you don't protect them, then what the heck are you doing? This man was Garrett Sutton, who's, I remember, I think like one time, twice, I talked to him on the phone. He's like, what are you doing? You don't even have the right protection. He's like, you need to get your house in order. And what's interesting is I've been following Garrett ever since I was in high school. I listened to the CDs, and as you know, he's part of the Rich Dad Advisors. He's traveled the world with Robert Kiyosaki. He's written books with Robert Kiyosaki about asset protection and what you need to know so that you can protect yourself in worst case scenarios. And I'm excited to have that conversation with him today. This podcast is brought to you by Nevada Real Estate Investments, your premier source for cash flow investment property. Visit www.turnkeyrealestateinvestments.com to learn more. So Garrett, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Abhi. Good to be with you again.
Likewise. So give us a little background for those of us that don't know who you are. A little background, a little bio, and what you do today.
Well, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, went to Berkeley, and then crossed the Bay and went to Hastings Law School in San Francisco. And, you know, I always enjoyed corporate law. And I moved to Reno, Nevada, and Nevada's a great state for corporations and LLCs. So I'm in the right place. And I became very fortunate to become associated with Robert Kiyosaki in the early 2000s when Rich Dad, Poor Dad first came out. And they had decided to create an advisor series, and they needed a Nevada attorney. And I was lucky enough to make the cut. And it's been very rewarding to travel around the world, as you mentioned, Abhi, with Robert Kiyosaki, teaching financial education. There's a thirst for financial education all around the world. And Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a popular book in almost every country. So, you know, this is international. The need for financial education, as well as the need, as you mentioned, for asset protection. It's true in every country. If you're going to start building your net worth, you need to think at the exact same time how to protect it. Because in our country and other countries around the world, there's litigation. People sue all the time to get at assets. And every government, including the United States, provides for structures, corporations, LLCs, limited partnerships, to protect yourself. So I've been doing this for many years now, and I've written 6 books in the Rich Dad Advisor series. I have another one coming out in the fall called Scam Proof Your Assets, guarding against widespread deception. You know, on the internet now, Abhi, they are out there to take your assets. So we've got to help people understand what they have to do to protect themselves from these cyber criminals. So it never ends, does it?
No, it does not. I never thought of it like that. I mean, you know, I take everything that I'm building online for granted, but I didn't know that there was. So when is this book coming out? Because I need a copy of it. I'm going to go to Amazon.
I'll get you a copy. It's coming out October 27th.
Awesome. Man, I'm excited. That's going to be some really in-depth detail. And then, of course, when that releases, we'll have you back to go really in-depth with that because, you know, we're building online businesses, and that's digital real estate, right? At www.domainname.com. How do we protect that? And I think that would be an excellent perspective from you as well. So let's talk about the real estate investing side. You've had a lot of experience in this world. Of course, just straight off the bat, first question, why should I care about spending a couple $1,000s in setting up an asset protection strategy when the likelihood of something happening is pretty small anyway? I know there are a couple of schools of thought there that are wrong, but go ahead.
It's less than $1,000 to set up the entity. Here's the thing. When you hold title in your individual name, you have a single family home and you just bought it and it made sense to just take title in your individual name. If someone sues you, if a tenant sues, they have access to the equity in that property, yes, you will have insurance. We always recommend that people have insurance. But, insurance companies find reasons not to cover you. On the back page of the insurance contract, there are all those exclusions where they find ways not to cover you. So certainly you're going to have insurance, but you need the second line of defense, which for real estate is going to be an LLC. It's not difficult to set up. It's not expensive. And the other thing is, if you get in a car wreck or whatever, and they want to come after your assets, if those assets, those real estate assets or business assets, gold, silver, paper assets are in your individual name, it's very easy for someone to reach them by putting them into the proper LLC mix. It's going to be hard for someone to get at them. So, Abhi, I always recommend that people have enough insurance. I recommend that people have an umbrella policy of insurance, a personal umbrella policy whereby your home and your autos are insured by the same company, and State Farm, Farmers, whatever you use. If your home and auto are with the same insurance company, you can ask them for an umbrella policy. And for $400 a year, you can get an extra $1 million in coverage. And that's good insurance to have, because if you get in that car wreck, that's one of the biggest risks now. You get in a horrific car wreck, you want enough insurance for the attorneys to get at, and then you want your other assets in LLCs, which make it tough for the attorney to get at. So they know how to get at the umbrella insurance, and they don't want to mess with going after the LLC interest. It's just not a good use of their time. So that's how we like to structure things.
So just like any good researcher, I'll go to YouTube and WebMD to find to find what's wrong with me medically and anything that I want to learn about anything on YouTube, and both of which are sometimes also very terrible sources of information. And when doing a YouTube search, I come across Wyoming LLCs, Nevada LLCs, Delaware LLCs. Where do I start with picking? Like, how do I pick? And why should I pick, say, one state over the other?
Those are the top three.
Okay.
Right? Those are the number, A, B, C. That Nevada, Delaware, Wyoming, not in that order, but they're the top three. And it's great because they compete against each other to be the best state, which is what we want. We want that kind of competition. So I like Wyoming over Nevada and Delaware for a couple reasons. All three of them offer great charging order protection. They both protect the single member, the one owner LLC. So in terms of asset protection, they're all good. In terms of privacy, Wyoming does not list your name on the state website. Nevada does. So in some of our clients who need a Nevada LLC will use a nominee so that their name doesn't appear on the website. But with Wyoming, your name doesn't appear automatically. So that's good. In terms of annual fees, Nevada and Delaware are a minimum of $350 a year. Wyoming is only $52 a year. So we like Wyoming for the asset protection, the privacy, and the low annual filing fees. But if you have a property in Nevada, you're going to use a Nevada LLC because that's where you're doing business. If you're going to start a business that may you have investors and it's a business and you may go Fortune 500, your investors may insist that you're a Delaware corporation or LLC. That's fine. But in 99% of all cases where it's just real estate and we're looking for a holding company that can give us the great charging order protection with privacy and a fair cost, the answer is Wyoming.
So when I look at my overall structure, let's say I've got the Wyoming LLC here at the top, and then that Wyoming LLC will offshoot into, say, Property LLC 1, Property LLC 2, Property LLC 3, all owned by this Wyoming LLC. Should each property have one property in it, or should each LLC have one property in it, or should each LLC have 4 or 5 or 6 or 100? How does that work from a legal perspective?
That's a
What do you
really good
suggest?
question, and it's a judgment call.
Okay.
All right. I wouldn't put 10 properties into one LLC. The issue being, if you get sued by a tenant involving one property, their claim is against the LLC that happens to own 10 properties. The tenant could get the equity in all 10 properties. Would you put just one property per LLC? That's the best asset protection. That's what some of my clients do. But then, you're in California, it's $800 per year per entity. So some of my clients may put 2 or 3 properties per LLC. My job is to explain what the risks are, what the consequences can be, but it's really your call on how many properties per LLC. For example, I have a client in North Dakota, and they have these mobile home units, and the equity is $10,000 each in them. They've decided to put 3 mobile home units in each property. The equity is only $30,000. If you had $1 million property and you were going to add another $1 million property to it, I might look at having 2 separate LLCs for the 2 separate $1 million properties.
So that makes a whole lot of sense. And when we talk about, so you talked about insurance, you talked about the 1, 2, or 3 LLCs owning 1 or 2 or 3 different properties. Does the same apply for multifamily? Does the same apply for commercial real estate? Does the same apply for, say, self-storage or land?
It's kind of the same analysis. If you have a multifamily property and there's good equity in it, you may want to have a separate LLC for each one. Now, let's say you invest in a multifamily with other investors. You're going to have a separate LLC anyway.
Yes.
Because, the 8 unit that you've invested with a couple guys in, you don't want them to have ownership in your 4-plex. Right, that you own separately. So in that situation, you're going to have 2 separate LLCs.
That makes sense. So going back to the tenant idea, so let's say I had a tenant. So let's say let me start from the top. Wyoming LLC owns an LLC that I threw one of my rental properties into. And let's say that this LLC that owns the rental property has an exclusive contract with Abhi Tenant Services LLC. And Abhi Tenant Service LLC is the one that's responsible for looking for and placing the tenants into property number 1. Should the tenants ever get angry or sue anybody, they can only sue Abhi Tenant LLC, in which case they would have, Abhi Tenant LLC doesn't own anything.
Well, the good lawyer answer here, Abhi, is it depends.
Okay.
All right. So Abhi Tenant LLC is actually an agent for the owner of the property. And so the owner can be brought in to that lawsuit. A good attorney would bring in not only Abhi Tenant LLC, the entity that really has no assets in it. I like your thinking.
I'm just trying to get away with it. I'm just trying to get creative here, Garrett. You can't blame me for it. I don't want to sit here in court all day, right? I don't have time for this.
I like your thinking, but a good attorney is going to say, look, you were recruiting tenants for the owner of the 4-plex. Abhi was the agent of the owner of the 4-plex. We're going to bring the owner of the 4-plex in. Nice try.
Correct. So true. So, okay. So let's say I do get sued for whatever reason. How would that process work? I would get served, and then they would find out that this property is owned by, let's say the property is in Nevada. The property is owned by a Nevada LLC, which is owned by a Wyoming LLC. So they would have to,
So the tenant on the Nevada property has sued you.
Yes.
Right? Now, they're going to sue the LLC if title is held in the name of the LLC, right?
Yes.
And so they're going to have service of process served upon notice of the lawsuit, served upon your registered agent in Nevada. And so it's important to have a registered agent that understands the importance of a lawsuit. You've only got 30 days to answer it. So that registered agent has an important role. They have to get in touch with you immediately so you can maintain your defense. If you go with a registered agent that shuts down or isn't open all the time, you may not get notice of that lawsuit, which is not a good thing.
Yes.
But let's say the registered agent promptly gets you notice. You're going to, the LLC has been sued, not Abhi, right? Yeah. So they haven't sued you personally. The claim is brought against the LLC itself, but that doesn't give them the right to get down to the Wyoming LLC that owns all of your other properties. So they have a claim just against that Nevada LLC. And to make the point again, if you had 10 properties in that one LLC, they could get the equity in all 10. So that's why we don't want to put too many properties into one LLC. But in that case, you would be, you would have an attorney in the state of Nevada that would represent you in this fraudulent lawsuit, right? Because you did nothing wrong.
Right, right. Exactly. See, I like how you're thinking.
And then we turn it over to the insurance company and, you know, they'll handle it.
All right. So I do want to just kind of maybe take a couple steps back because we got a little advanced in asset protection strategy. But I overall, if you're a little confused and you're watching this, one, asset protection is important. Number two, Garrett recommends a Wyoming LLC to own the other entities that own properties. He also recommends having, well, it's kind of a judgment call on how many properties you want for in each LLC, but keep in mind the more properties that you have within each LLC, that also increases your overall liability, your risk associated with potentially getting sued, and that lawsuit being able to attach judgments if you lose to the other properties in the form of a lien. So whenever you sell, then you're going to have to pay it out. So ultimately, asset protection is a good thing. You want to pay attention to it. It's like you need a good asset protection attorney, you need a great CPA, you need a great team, and Garrett and his team are world class. You want to make sure you absolutely get in touch with them. Garrett, another question for you. On my YouTube search, I found, see, I love how you're laughing at me already. Okay, I'm trying to get to your level, okay? Like I'm just trying to be a better person. So
you are a better person.
So I also found a land trust. How does a land trust work in the equation of asset protection? Should I take it seriously or should I not take it seriously? And that's the last question for you.
Well, there's so much misinformation about the land trust. It's important for people to know that it provides zero asset protection, all right? And these people who say that you set up a land trust or even a living trust, which you set up for probate avoidance, they'll say a living trust provides asset protection. It doesn't, all right? So to do the land trust right, you've got to set up the land trust. And then the beneficiary of the land trust is personally responsible for whatever happens on the property. So the beneficiary then has to be an LLC. Well, why even set up the land trust? Just use the LLC to begin with. Right. We're not a big fan of land trusts. And really, Abhi, the misinformation out there on the internet is incredible. So I'm sure you've seen some of it in your searches. They say that, the land trust is not only great for asset protection, but it's also the fountain of youth. You just have to step back and think critically for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely believe that it's a fountain of youth because I sleep better at night.
Oh, good. All right.
I hydrate. I drink a lot of water. And then I feel good that there's a solid strategy in place. So
asset protection with LLCs is the fountain of youth. Land trusts or not.
Oh, yes, agreed. 1,000% agreed. So if I'm watching this and I'm really, really intrigued and I don't have an asset protection strategy in place, but I know I need one, how do I get in touch with you and your team? How do we take that next step and start the ball rolling forward?
Well, our website is corporatedirect.com. We offer a free 15-minute consult with an incorporating specialist. So you can call 800-600-1760, 800-600-1760. And, we'll get on the line and just see if we can help you, see if there's a fit. We'll send you a quote for what our services are to initially set it up. And then you have to know what it's going to cost every year thereafter. The fees go way down for the second year. It's kind of fun. This summer, my son has just finished his first year at the University of Wyoming Law School.
Oh, awesome.
So he's answering the phones. So if you call this summer, you'll get Ted on the line, and he'll tell you about Wyoming.
Of course he would. I wouldn't expect anything less. That's fantastic. That's great. Well, Garrett, thank you so much for the time. It's always a pleasure speaking with you and getting some of these insights firsthand, because it's a lot, like you said, I mean, there's a lot of misinformation out there. If you're looking at land trusts, kill that idea, right? What you need to do is go to corporatedirect.com, get in touch with Garrett and his team, and really put that proper, solid asset protection plan in place, especially if you plan on continuing to buy real estate over time. Garrett, thanks a lot again. I look forward to speaking with you soon.
That sounds great. Thanks, Abhi.
You got it. Thanks again, Garrett. So, Think Realty Nation, the next segment is brought to you by Real Property Management, which is the largest residential property management franchise in North America, managing tens of thousands of properties for investors, individuals, and institutions throughout the country. Learn more at realpropertymgt.com or call 888-806-7088. Let's talk about the best and worst places. Actually, no, just the best places. I'm feeling the best places on this one. All right, the best places to find investment property under $100,000. This is coming from, where is this coming from? I don't have any data on this. It's coming from Yahoo Finance, but sometimes this kind of stuff can be a little suspect. But you know what? Let's go with it. The best states to find low-cost investment properties. This would be like a good gut check. How about that? Let's do that. Illinois, the average home sale price being reported at $45,000. So this is really important for those investors that are working on a little bit of a budget, but you're also looking for that next strategy. You're looking for that next location where you can deploy the right capital and get the return that you're looking for without having to spend $10 million for a square inch in downtown LA. All right, so this might be for you. Illinois, you can buy a property roughly about $45,000. Wisconsin, $82,000. Oklahoma, $70,000. New Jersey, $55,000. In Missouri, $75,000. The best cities to purchase single-family rentals: Milwaukee, Memphis, Detroit, Springfield, Illinois, Kansas City, Columbus, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, all ranging between $70,000 and $84,000. So take a look, right? Like, it's okay to invest in properties outside of your backyard if you're willing to do the homework, and the benefit that you have is you're going to have an appraiser, you're going to have an inspector, you're going to have these professionals getting in touch and saying, hey, here's what's wrong with the property. So don't feel as anxious as you normally would, because you're relying on these professionals to give you their professional opinion. I know I said the word professional like at least 8 times in that sentence, but I want to get the message across that you're working with professionals and it'll be okay. If you have any questions, get in touch. These markets I thought were kind of interesting. Grand Rapids, Michigan, another one to take a look at, and of course, Charlotte, North Carolina. But that being said, if you have any questions, you certainly want to get in touch, and the best way to do that is to go to thinkrealty.com. You can find me anywhere online at Abhi Golhar. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn right now, so catch me there. And we're here to be a resource for you. And just like the conversation with Garrett Sutton today, I hope you found significant value with that, and hopefully get in touch with this team so you can really understand what it takes to be that elite real estate investor and have your assets protected. You see, I enunciated that properly. This podcast is brought to you by Norada Real Estate Investments, your premier source for cash flow investment property. Visit www.turnkeyrealestateinvestments.com to learn more. Think Realty Nation, it's a wrap. Until next time, happy investing.